Hello everyone and welcome back to another video of how to create an app on Thunkable. Today we're looking at creating an application of a recipe book. It's going to look something like this. So we start off with a splash screen, which takes us to the main screen, which has all the recipes. And I've got a list of recipes here, and once I click on one of them, it takes me to another page which has the name of that recipe, a picture of it, cooking time, servings, ingredients, and the instructions. And if I go back, it brings me back to all recipes page. Again, I select another one and it takes me again back to the same page. And as you notice here, I only have 3 pages. One is the splash screen page, one is the all recipes page, and then a third page which by the look of it, it only contains blank boxes. But then, as we've just seen now, those boxes are filled out later on once the application is active. So let's get started to see how this application is built from the design section up to the block section. As usual, we're starting off by clicking on create new project, and I'm going to name this recipe book and then click create. That will take me to the main page where we get to design everything. And the first thing I'm going to do is rename the screens. So I'm going to need 3 screens. This is going to be the splash screen. Not exactly necessary. You can opt to not having a splash screen, but I'm going to have one. And I'm also going to have a second page, which I will call the home screen. And a third page, which will be called the recipe screen. After this, I'm going to go back to the first page, which is the splash screen. And for the splash screen, I am going to need an image, only an image which will contain my logo. And actually, I am going to add one label as well. Now for this entire project, I'm going to use a set of images. So I'm going to navigate to the assets section and upload all the images I need. I should have 4 assets added. Once I see that all assets have been uploaded, I can now move on to changing this image. Again, we do that by moving on to the side here and then selecting that image, which is the cookbook logo. And then I'm going to move into the label and change this label to the name of the app, which I'm going to call Cookery. I can also change the color and font of this app, and I can align it to be centered. And right now I have the design of the splash screen ready. I can move on to the block section. In the block section, what I want to do is when the splash screen opens, navigate to another screen, which in this case is going to be the home screen. And I would like it to wait for a couple of seconds before moving on to that page. And that's it for the splash screen. I'm going to move on to the design section of the second page, which is the home screen. And for this one, I'm going to select a background image. And my background image is going to be this one. Waiting for it to load. Yes, that will be my background screen. And for this, I'm going to need one label. And one data viewer. So I'm just going to navigate in the component section and drag in the data viewer. Resize that. And then in the label section, I'm going to rename that to label title, as this is the title of this page. And then I'm going to set the visibility or the text visible as all recipes. Again, I'll be changing the font. And the positioning of the text. Enlarge the size of the font maybe. Yes. And as for this data viewer, once I click on it, you can see that on the side here it says connect to data source, which is what we've seen in a previous video as well. I am going to connect a data source which I've already created, and it is a recipe book. Now for demonstration purposes, I'm just going to show you what that Excel sheet looks like, which is a Google Sheet data source. This is what this recipe book looks like. So it has the dish name, the cooking time, number of serving, ingredients, instructions, and the image, as well as the type of this dish, which is unnecessary, but I've kept it there just in case I wanted to add additional features into the app. By the way, I've not Googled any of these dishes or recipes at all. I've just used the Gemini feature in Google Sheets to create all of this data, and you could do the same. As for these images, what I've done basically is just look for a picture. Let's say spaghetti carbonara, and navigating to the images section. Assuming you've liked this image and you'd like to use it as a resource in your Excel sheet, then you can just open image in new tab and then copy this link here, which you will then add next to the dish that you've been selecting or writing data on. So you'll just paste that link here and you'll have that image there. Okay, so going back into my recipe book, or the application of a recipe book, I now have the data source connected, and I can select how I want this data to be visible. So I'm going to go for an image and a title, and I will select the image to be the image. Yeah, so now I've got all the pictures here, and I will select the title to be the dish name. And this is all as a reference of the titles on the Excel sheet itself. So if I navigate to the Excel sheet, you can see the titles here, or the first column, the first row, sorry, which has dish name, cooking time, number of serving, ingredients, instructions, and image. And that's what I've selected right here. The name of the column that I'm linking this data to. Now that we're done creating the design of the second page, which is the home screen, we can move on to the block section to code it. And to do that, we're going to start with a variable. As you can know, we've got different items in the design block. So if I just navigate to the design block again one more time, we've got different items here that need to be displayed on a single page. So the name of that recipe, the cooking time, the ingredients, and the instructions all need to be displayed here, but that's a lot of information. And instead of creating several pages for each recipe, we're using only one page to display all that information. So that information needs to be stored somewhere, which is why we're using a variable. So we move on to the variable section, and then we're going to initialize a variable. I'm going to call this dish recipe row, and make sure that there is no space in the name that you're writing. And of course, I'm going to create an object out of that as well. Yeah, so just link that there. Now, once the variable's been created, we are going to now code the data viewer. So once an item on the data viewer is clicked, what we want to do is, again, go to the variables, set that variable to something that we're going to get from the data source. As you remember, our data source that we've linked into our application is the Excel sheet that we have here. So we need to link that as well in the coding section. And to do that, what we want to do is for the variable to retrieve information from the specific row that's been assigned. And so we are going to get row object, connect that here. So set that app variable and get that information from the row ID according to whatever row we're clicking on, whatever item we're clicking on. And of course, once we select that, we want to navigate again to the next page, which is the recipe page. And set that to recipe page. Okay, now move on to the design section. And we're going to design the last page, which has the recipe. If you remember, once we looked at this page earlier, it only had labels, empty labels, and it didn't have any information. And that's what we're going to build now. So again, we're going to drag labels, plenty of labels. And this is going to be label dish name. And we're going to leave that empty because it's going to be filled later on. We also need an image of that dish. And I'm going to resize this box. And I'm also going to select contain. So whatever size the image is going to be contained in this box. Next, I'm going to add additional labels for the cooking time, number of servings, ingredients, and instructions. So in this section, I'm just going to speed up, just not to bore you with the details. As you can see now, we've got all of the boxes ready for the information to be substituted after coding it in the block section. The only thing you need to remember or notice is that I have changed the name of some of the labels, but not all of them. So if you look at this one, for example, it just says label. The same with this one, and this one, and this one. So these don't really matter in the coding section. The blank ones are the ones that matter. So as for this one, I've renamed it to the dish name. This one, I've renamed it to the cooking time, the servings, label servings, and this I've renamed it to label ingredients, and the last one to label instructions. I've also changed the color of all of the boxes. I've also changed the font that I want the text to be added here. So whatever text that's going to be added here, I've already changed the font that it's going to be in, and I've set the color to be black. Yeah, so now we can move on to the block section to see how do we fill in all of this information and retrieve it from our data source. Now to code this section, what we want to do is first go to the recipe screen. And once that page is open, we want to set those labels into certain values. Starting with the label dish name. So set label dish names text to, and we are going to go to the object section and select this one, get property of object. And the property that we're looking for are the names of the columns in our Excel sheet. So for me, it's dish name, cooking time, number of servings, ingredients, instructions, and image. And make sure when you're writing these columns, they are written exactly the same. What's capital is still capital and the spacing is still the same. And so for me, this is going to be dish name, and I am going to get that property from my variable. And that's it. And we're going to duplicate this and change it for the other items. So we've done that for the label dish name, and we're going to do that for the image. So we are going to set the image and retrieve it from the image column to the variable which is represented in the Excel sheet as well. Duplicate that again one more time. Do it for the next item, which is the cooking time. And I'm going to change the property here to cooking time. Duplicate again. And do the same for the number of servings. And my column name in the Excel sheet is number of servings. What else do we have? Let me have a look in the design section. Yes, we have the ingredients and the instructions, so we'll copy again twice. So one for the ingredients. And the last one for the instructions. Yeah, that's it. Let's test it out. Going back to the splash screen. Again, it navigates me to this page. And then if I select one, I'm being sent to this page and I can see all of the different information have already been added. One thing I forgot to do is add a back button into my recipe screen. So right here, and I've also forgot to center this text here. So I do want this text to be centered, which is this one here, and I do need to add a back button up there to send me back to the old recipes page. I'm going to put this button up here. I'm going to delete the text. I'm also going to set the color as transparent, and then I'm going to upload an image. Now the last thing I want to do also is change the background color. White seems a bit too harsh, so I'm going to change that to a green and change the opacity of that green. And of course we need to code this button here. So when the button is clicked, we want to navigate to the recipe screen. And just like that, you now have access to a fully functional application with all 3 pages working, and you may add additional features if you would like to. Let me know in the comments what you think of this video or this tutorial. If you have any questions, drop them down below, and make sure you like and subscribe for additional resources that will be coming up soon. Thank you and have a good day.